Hi y'all, I just wanted to share some napkin transfer techniques with you as I got ready to do my project. Sally had said she was struggling with it a little bit. So I'm going to be making a cuff today. So I've already got my cuff prepared, 2 layers. At least 1/3 of your color blend should be translucent to make it strong. We have a little dish with a tiny bit of water, your blade, your napkin strip, and a piece of parchment paper. Just a quick tip on how I plan my design. If you're making a cuff bracelet, is that little kit, I think we all have them, that Pandora put out with the bracelets. I really don't use it for much other than this, but I just laid it over my napkin to figure out where I wanted my design. In this particular case, the piece of napkin that I wanted to use is the textured bottom of the napkin. I love the texture that this leaves on my bracelet. Some people do not. So simply use a dry iron on your napkin on a hard surface, and it will make those really kind of go away. It'll make the texture a lot less apparent. One of the biggest things that I have found in the transfer technique is that people are not getting all of the layers of the napkin off, and so they're really fighting with separating it. These napkins all have many layers. Now I've already peeled off 2 full layers of backing, and this is the 3rd. Some have 3, some have 4. But it's really important that you get that off, because this is where I think that a lot of folks are making their mistake. And I'm just going to peel it off very carefully so that I don't tear the very thin remaining part of the napkin left. Now, a few tips on transfer is, if a napkin has a solid background like this, all of that is dyed and will transfer. If you choose a napkin that has a white background, this is simply bleached paper. It doesn't have a color to the background. Your only color that'll transfer will be the actual pattern. Sorry about the bumpy video, guys. My tripod isn't very stable. You can see where I've started this one, and I always lay anything with a white background on a translucent base. That'll all be covered up, so I like a pretty inside base. I also do my cuff bracelets. I wrap them in wrinkled foil. I kind of wrinkle the foil and then straighten it out and put it on my bracelets. Gives me a really pretty texture to the back of my bracelet and avoids some of the plaquing appearance that you get when you use translucent in your clay. So just a quick tip there. Now, the first thing you need to know is that your clay needs to be sticky. Ooey gooey chewing gum sticky for this to work. I don't know if you can hear this, but you hear my finger peeling up there? That's how sticky you want. So if it's not that sticky, you need to work it and touch it and texture it and and feel it and warm it up in your hands. I roll it through the pasta machine a lot more times than necessary, because I want it warm and sticky. And yes, it's harder to work with, but I promise you it will be totally worth the effect. If your clay is too dry to start with, then be sure to add clay softener before you get it done. You'll want to, after handling your item to make it warm, you'll want to do as much of the smoothing process as you can at this point for shaping. You don't have to worry too much about the little dips and divots, because those are kind of going to straighten out with what we're working. Now, here is kind of the important part. These napkins have 2 sides. And yes, I know that's pretty obvious, but again, where I'm seeing some mistakes is that they're laying the pretty side facing them. There's no dye on the pretty side. So you want that ugly side facing you, the pretty side on your item. So you're going to kind of lay it where you want. And of course, for the bracelets, I start in the center. I want my focal as centered as possible. And we all know me, I'm a little too anal about that stuff, but it is what it is. Okay. So then I'm going to press it. I love this texture, so again, I'm going to keep it. And I'm just going to start pressing it down. Now you kind of got to be a little gentle here because the napkin will tear, especially on a round surface. If you're using translucent clay, make sure you have it where you want it before you start pressing it in, because sometimes the transfer technique can actually begin before you have burnished it in. Some of the dyes are really, really quick to transfer. Okay, so I'm not quite happy with that. I'm going to lift it up again. It's easier on the white napkins because you can see your clay underneath. But sorry guys, this is taking a little longer than I thought it might. But once it starts to transfer, you don't get a second chance. So let's see here if that's better. I'm going to come out of the video a little bit. This is really a fun and fascinating technique, and it really pays off when you get it to work out just the way you want it to. A little bit harder on these rounded surfaces, which is why I'm showing you on the rounded surface. Okay, so I've got it lined up where I want it. Notice I did not cut super, super close to my shape of my bracelet, and that's because I want to round these corners over and get dye on the sides. Okay, so now you're going to kind of press it in. You're going to take your little parchment paper and you're going to gently rub. And this is a patience part, my friends. You need to be patient here because the plasticizers in the clay are going to help grab that transfer, so you really need to get it burnished in. This is not really a matter of running your roller over it. That heat and that friction softens the clay even further and brings the oils up through the clay to your napkin. And you can kind of see the process here. See if I can bring it into the light. See how I can see the clay through there? I'm also, as I rub, able to see more and more of the pattern more clearly. And it's going to take you a couple of good minutes to get this done. Okay, so as I do this, I just want to kind of show you the difference in this other piece here. If I can pull it apart real quick. Okay, so this is the little cutout piece of this flower. This is the front, this is the back. So you see how much we've burnished it so that it would pull the color through? You really want to be able to see the image of the burnished napkin better from the back side than you did for the front to know that you have it adhered properly. So just a quick there. One of these days we need to do this in a live conversation so that each of us can teach a technique and ask questions and answer questions. Okay, now I'm folding these corners down. Sorry guys, I forget that I have to work like this. This is kind of where the rounded surface becomes more of an issue, but I'm just kind of going to get it started here and kind of get it in place. And I don't particularly care if these are a little bit folded over. You know how your edges fold? You see how you kind of get that little gather stitch? Because again, this particular method I love because it makes it really look like vintage fabric. Okay, so now here is my secret tip. Not so secret, but here's why I think I have a little bit better result than most people. And that is, especially on the rounded surface, I take and I dab my finger in the water and I very lightly go over the bracelet after I'm done burnishing it. This gets the napkin to really stick and seal. And I find that I don't get as many lifts in the die on a rounded surface this way. Some people suggested maybe doing the water beforehand. That just gives me bubbles and I don't feel like I get the good transfer that I needed. So just very gently. Do not rub hard because you're going to peel your napkin off at this point, and that's just a bummer for all the work that you did. And you see this little gathering? That's okay because you're only going to transfer one section of the die. So, okay. Then you let this sit and you let it dry until it's ready to go into, when it's fully dry, then it's ready to go into the oven and cure. I always cure my bracelets for and see, that'll start to rip off the excess. That's okay. It really is. It makes it easier to work with later. But I don't peel it back. If it doesn't come off readily, don't do it, because it'll peel right off your bracelet and you'll lose that dry transfer. Okay, so you see how well that's adhered? Here's the original. Here is the clay. And you can kind of see a little bit of the color of the clay through there, but that's the look that I was going through. Let's hope it's successful. You could also do this on translucent and see more of the yellow. I'm going to use these colors in a little bit, and hopefully I'll get as much of that gorgeous color. I may actually put the translucent layer under the napkin so that I get these really low, thin colors to show up in there. Okay, now this one's dry. It's ready to go into the oven. I hope that's as pretty as it looks to be right now. Okay, so we're going to cure it for an hour, and then we are going to let it cool and drop it into a bowl of cool water to soak for a bit. I will come back after that and show you the rest of the technique.